I'm not muted, I hope, which means you can see me, and you can still see it says the 20th of April, because I refuse to change it, because I'm an idiot. So, I'll quickly change that. Now it says 21st, but it doesn't, it just says 21st of April now. Otherwise I'm going to get complaints from people. How are you all? I hope you're well. If it's your first lesson of the day, then you've come to the right place for amazing learning and fun and frolics. Sure. And definitely no jokes. No jokes. We don't do jokes in math. Math is very, very serious. If you're back for more, then brilliant. That means you must be enjoying yourselves. We are going to learn today. Today is built mainly around one joke, which I really like, and the entire lesson is constructed to support that one joke. Definitely not. I wouldn't do something like that. We're going to look at all sorts of things about cake, because cake is amazing. And looking at direct proportion. So we're going to learn about direct proportion imminently. So if you're new to the channel and you're not sure what happens, or if you're back for more, you will know what happens. Mr. Harris speaks briefly, introduces the video, talks random rubbish. You have to ignore his silly jokes, because that's kind of the only reason he does it, because he loves telling silly jokes. And then we'll go straight into learning some maths. Hopefully will make sense. If you're stuck, you ask questions. I'm pointing to the right of my screen because that's where the live chat is. So if I turn like that, that means I'm looking at the live chat, but you can see the side of my face. And you can ask people. There are people in there who will happily help you. There are people who will answer questions. You can respond to things. It's how we do. If you're coming back to this later, that's absolutely fine. You don't have to be part of the live thing. Use the comments below the video. Ask me questions. Tell me feedback. Ask for new topics. Respond. The more responses I have, the more I'll interact with you. And then go on the Facebook group, as you can see, to go and share pictures of your work. And there's resources in the link below. I've talked for too long. Let's go straight into the studio. Here it is. This today is all about strawberry disaster cake. Okay? Hence a recipe for disaster. No, I'm not doing the entire lesson just around one pun, but it makes me smile. This is all about strawberry disaster cake, and we're going to be looking at proportion. But before we do, here's your starter activity. Categorical today, so you've got 45 seconds to write down as many different types of cake as you can. As many different cakes as you possibly can. Off you go. I'm going to say some hellos. So, good morning to... Oh, wow. Got lots of scrolling to do. Good morning to Eddie and Claire. And good morning to... Wow. We've scrolled so far already. Good morning... West Creative. I don't know who you are, but good morning. Morning, Bolt the Husky. Good morning, Andrew Lee. Good morning, Alicia. Good morning, Sharanya. Good morning, Vera. Good morning, Reese from North Wales. Good morning, Nathan. Good morning, Jess Remvids from Year 5. Good morning, Midnight Games. Good morning. If I'm missing anyone, I do apologise. Good morning, all. Good morning, Jess. Good grief, there's so many people. Good morning, Harry. Good morning. If I've missed anyone, I do apologise. Good morning, Amber. Hopefully that's your 45 seconds up, so I'm going to have to go back to the video. But if I've missed anyone, I do apologise. Hopefully you're all naming. Good morning, William's friends at Utterby Primary School in Lincolnshire, and Shay and Mr. S. Good morning, William. Morning, Alice. We've had enough of hellos. Hopefully you've all got lots of cake types. Cheesecake, banana cake, lemon cake, fudge cake, chocolate cake, cupcakes. Lots of different cakes. If you're not watching this live, feel free to pause the video and come up with as many different cakes as you possibly can. But for now, I'm going to move on from cake. So, why am I talking about cake? What's it got to do with maths? How is it going to be useful? Well, recipes for cakes or for any amount of food use something called direct proportion. What that means is they will be recipes for a certain number of people. If you've got more or less people, we need a mathematical method for converting using direct proportion. I'm going to start simple, but then we're going to get more advanced. There is an activity in the description below which is all about a cake cook-off challenge. All sorts of information on it. It wasn't designed by me. I've taken it from a maths website. Thank you very much for the lady who put that together. I am going to go straight on into showing you the recipe that we're going to be using. This is the recipe for... It's a recipe for disaster. Yes! Yes! I'm so proud of that terrible joke. What you can't see, because I've removed myself from the screen, is me actually celebrating, telling that terrible pun while I have a cup of tea. Now, you will see in the top corner, and this is the most important thing for today, it says it serves 24. And it's got all the numbers. And we're going to be using that to do some work on direct proportion. I'm going to show you how I work with direct proportion, how I recommend you do it. I'm not going to force you to, but this is what I recommend you do. Now you will notice this is an American recipe, that's why it says units US, and it uses ounces and not grams, and it's the American ounce, possibly, so it'll be used pound weights and ounces and things like that, and cups rather than millilitres. Doesn't matter. What we're focusing on today is the numbers. So, I'm going to take us over to my live studio, my whiteboard, where we can see I've got the recipe all ready for us down the right hand side. So, what I've done here, we want to serve 24. We're going to be focusing on today, what about serving 48, 12, 72. All these different things, how would I go about working out the recipe? Now, the actual what to do with the ingredients I've cut out, because that's not the mathematical bit. What we want to do, imagine we're doing a party, we've actually got 48. I'm also going to do what we're going to do for serving 36. Okay? So we can then see the method that Mr. Harris employs, and hopefully it will make some sense to you. First of all, we're looking at 48. And what I do is I set it up like this. So I have got an arrow. When it serves 24, and we're going to choose something, and we need 4 eggs. It doesn't matter what we're using here, we're focusing on the eggs first. I'll do something with fractions later in the video. What I then have underneath, and I use these things called an arrow diagram. Whatever we do on one side, this is the key to direct proportion. Direct proportion is whatever you do to one side, you also do to the other side. So we could, there's two ways to look at this diagram, and I'm going to talk about both of them. We could just go, well, this is times 2, so this is going to be times 2, so it's 8x. But the astute among you will have noticed we could have actually gone, this is divide by 6. The cool thing about an arrow diagram is they work along both sets of arrows. Whichever way it goes across, it will do the same thing going across here. Whatever it does going down, it will do the same thing going down. We've started sensibly with a simple number like 48. I'm going to do a second one for 48, but we're now going to focus on the cups of cold water. So we've now got 24. The reason I've done that is because 24 doesn't go nicely into 10. So we're going to instead go 48, just like we did before. We're going to have to use the arrows going down. Well done if you know that it's divide by 2.4, but it's not as useful as just going, well, this is times 2, so we're going to times that by 2, so it's 20 cups. The first one is not supposed to be difficult with numbers. It's supposed to be getting you the idea of these arrow diagrams that I use whenever I'm doing these sorts of questions. Direct proportion, I always use an arrow diagram to try and help me. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. So, we have ticked off 48. That was quite straightforward. Well, it makes sense to me just to delete the bits of this that are going to be reused, because I want you to see that this is kind of like a formulaic approach to doing maths. We're now not going to 48, we're going to 12. But the cool thing about this, we can either times or divide, never add and take away. Down the arrows. We can still use our divide by 6, that would still work, but we're now doing 12, so divide by 6, that would be 2 eggs. The other way is, this is no longer times by 2, this is now either divide by 2 or times a half. Remember, timesing by half is the same as divide by 2. Whatever way you do it, write it consistently. Divide by 2, that's why it's 12. It's still not too difficult, but we're just making sure we're building a solid method. These diagrams are how we're supposed to build the method to make sure that we always get the right amount. Here, again, times 0.5, so it's times 0.5, so it's 5 cups. This has not been too difficult so far. All we've looked at, and there is a super heavyweight one. What about serving 50 people? I'm going to do that as like the last big, wow, Mr. Harris, you've really nailed that. I don't know about nailing, but I'm going to go through that at the end. We're going to now, again, rub out everything to do with 12. But keep the diagram. And just to make it clear, I'm going to switch from eggs. Because I want you to not go, oh, it's always eggs, it's always 4. I want us to have different measurements. So we're going to keep the cups because 10 doesn't go nicely into 24. So it's quite a nice way of seeing how the arrow diagram helps us. So we'll start off with 72. We've now got a more difficult calculation. So 24, 48, 72. It's actually times by 3. This one still goes nicely. So it must be 30 cups. Again, we could have divided by 2.4. Divide by 2.4, you get 30 cups. However, when we get this one, now we can see I haven't even got my recipe in yet. I haven't got my amount, and I can already see what I'm going to need to do. The reason that's helpful, I did mention earlier, I'm going to start looking at fractions. I need 2 1/4 cups of strawberries. So timesing back by 3, I get 6 3/4. If you're not clear where that comes from, that's 2 times 3 is 6, and 1/4 times 3 is 3/4. So I'm now starting to process what I do with the cups of strawberries, or the more difficult amounts. Notice English recipes often don't have cups, they'll have more millilitres or grams if you're more measuring, but this is it all applies the same way. Everything I'm teaching you here is about how to use these arrow diagrams to make things easier. Hopefully that makes sense. Now while you're looking at that, I'm going to briefly look and see if there's any questions. Some people are talking about TikTok and things. Okay, clearly I'm boring them. I do apologise. Hopefully this is still learning. For some of you, this is still making sense to you. Are there any questions? So we're going to carry on, and this time we're going to look at 36. So what I'm going to do now is, how will I do 36? Well, it's the first one which doesn't go nicely. And there is a trick when it doesn't go nicely. And that's what I intend to show you. It is something called the Unitary Method. Because it doesn't go nicely, I know there'll be some people screaming at their TVs or their phones or their things going, yes it does, you can times it by 1.5. Well done for seeing that you can do it by 1.5. Some of the year 9s and 8s will spot that quite quickly, but some of you won't, and that's okay. If it doesn't go nicely, we use stepping stones. Here's how I do it. I find a number that it bridges to and do divide 2 times 3. Now this is not quite the unitary method yet. I'll talk to you about why it's not. As long as I do the same divide 2 times 3, I get a third line in here. So divide by 2 will actually be 1 and an eighth. If you divide a quarter in half, you get an eighth. Times by 3, we get 3 and 3/8 of a cup. But the true unit means ones. Like in hundreds, tens, and units, we got ones. We go via 1. This is for if you couldn't find a stepping stone. We did in this one, but you'll see in the 50 we're going to need to use 1 because 24 doesn't go nicely into 50. So that we would divide by 24 times by 36. To do the unitary method, you divide by the first number to get down to 1, times by the second number to get up to the next bit. And so, I've gone missing, I've gone a-wandering. We can use this with something with a different type of information. For example, if I focus on the 2/3 of a cup of vegetable oil. So I have 2/3. I divide it by 24. Now this is where you're going to need to do some work on fractions. I will do some work on manipulating fractions, but we did do multiplying fractions and dividing. If you do want to do 2/3 divide by 24, it's the same as divide by 24 over 1, which is the same. We flip it over, kiss, and fall head over heels in love. So we get 2 over 72, which is also known as 1 over 36. So now when we do our times, because we have to divide by 24 and times by 36, we're going to get times by 36, 1 over 36. It must just be 1. 36/36. We've able to get from 24 to 36 by doing this unitary method, jumping to 1 and getting it out. I'm sorry if this has been dry for you. The actual challenge is quite interesting. I just want to make sure all the teaching is there for you. I promise you there's not much more talking. I'm going to do one more super question. And in order to do that, I'm going to get rid of all of this. Like magic. And get rid of that and get rid of that. So, why have I done that? Because we're going to finish off this teaching bit with the strawberry disaster cake on how to serve 50. So we start off 24 goes to, and we're going to choose something at random here. So I'm going to choose the boxes of strawberry flavoured Danish dessert mix. Normally we need 5 boxes. But we want to serve 50, and 24 does not go nicely into 50. So we're going to go via 1 by dividing by 24 and timesing by 50. Remember, all this, if you've got a calculator or on your phone, you can actually use it as a decimal. I prefer leaving them as fractions, which is why I'm going to leave this as 5/24ths, because when you divide it by 24, you get that. Times it by 50, I end up with 250 over 24, which actually simplifies down to 125 over 12, which is 10 and 5/12ths. 10 boxes and 5/12ths of a box. Okay, so if the boxes break down easily, that's into different wrappers and things, that would be really helpful. But what I've tried to show you is this arrow diagram is what told us what to do. We copied the divide by 24, then we copied the times by 50. That is why we were able today to look at different servings. We focused on one recipe because then what you're going to go away and do, you choose the level of it. The worksheets in the description below. The worksheets in the description below have different recipes. You choose how hard you want to make it. You can choose to do the starter if you're maybe if you're year 5 and 6 and this has all been a little bit slow burning for you and it's been a bit complicated, that's fine. The mains, that's for people who are like, I think I get this, I just want to do a few. And then you've got the desserts for anyone who really wants to push themselves and go, I'm going to have a go at the desserts. You can do all of them, you can do some of them. This has all been about helping you to learn. Midnight Games, maybe if you weren't talking about TikTok, you might understand a bit better. You need to ask questions if you're sure, if you're stuck. Okay? If you've got any questions, you've got to ask. I can only answer questions. I can't help people who aren't asking questions. It's not that I don't want to help you. I can only answer questions that once I know how you're stuck. Which, if there's one of these you'd like me to go through again, or just rerun the video and watch what I did. For each one, I've tried to put it so that the amount from the recipe, which is up here in this corner, if you can't see it, is the first thing. And that told us that we needed 5 boxes. So that all came from the recipe, that wasn't from us. We then looked at our question, which is we want to do this cake for 50 people. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to go via 1. Go 1, then to 50. That's where that 50 comes from. That's what's told us what to do. And then we just did it. We didn't, or none of this was, all we were doing was just doing the calculations as we were following through. Okay. That should have been on the screen when I was going through that. So I've highlighted bits, but you couldn't see it. I've highlighted that the 24 was there and there, so you can see the 24 from here comes from up there, and the 5 comes from there, and then we're serving 50, so that's why we've put a 50, and we went divide by 24 times 50, divide by 24 times 50. I've been doing quite well at not being on the screen, and then I messed up. I do apologise. So this is where we're up to. Hopefully that has made some sense for you. I have gone through a long process, but because I wanted you to understand what was going on. I think I've lost a couple of viewers, but that's understandable. Some of the lessons won't be as exciting. I've tried to put a few jokes in and things along the way. But it is that some of the topics are more, we have to go away and practice them. That's why I've tried to make the actual activity afterwards in the description below a bit more interesting. What activity, sir? Well, there's a cook-off challenge. If you look on there, there's a cook-off challenge. You have to choose the price of the items. You have to work out how much of the items and then work out how much they're going to cost. It's all in there. The answers are there as well, because the object of maths with Mr. Harris is not to get the answers. We can use the answers to check whether we understand it or not. So you can copy the answers out if you want. That won't get you anything. Or have a go at them, send in photos. Remember, the whole point of these questions is that we're here. The videos are not just do the video and then we've done maths. You've done no maths unless you've understood something, unless you've gone away and practiced it. So you need to now go and do the things. I'm not like a teacher who will give you detention or anything. If you don't do it, you probably just won't improve. If you want to improve, all you have to do is try and do the practice. I've seen lots of wonderful people. I've got year 5s and 4s and 6s doing the work. And so anyone who does it, let me know. I'll thank you very much. Everyone has different capabilities and things. Thank you very much for all the hard work. I've been Mr. Harris. You have been awesome. And I will speak to you all soon.